Good morning. Good morning. My name is Elizabeth, and I am the Director of Marketing Intelligence for Service Corporation International. And I'm so excited to be here today with you all to represent our consumer-facing brands of Dignity Memorial and Neptune Society. So Service Corporation International is probably one of the vaguest company names that you have never heard of. But Dignity Memorial and Neptune Society are recognized as leading brands in what we call the death care space. So cemetery and funeral services. So we're taking a little bit of a left turn from the fun, let's get alcohol and beverages, stuff that everyone wants but maybe not needs. And now we're talking about things that everyone needs but nobody actually wants to purchase, right? So SCI is a very large company, right? We serve more than 700,000 families a year in two primary business streams. So we have what we call our at-need business stream, which is you have a loved one or a family member who has passed away, and you need help immediately. Then we also have our pre-planning side of the business, which is where my team, sales and marketing, tend to operate, right? Which is where we're working with living customers, right, and their families to plan and pay for their own final arrangements so that emotional and financial burden is not present at the time of death. So we make up about 15% of the market share in this really fragmented space in North America. Most of this business is still owned and operated by mom and pop shop funeral homes. You know the one that was on the corner in your hometown, and you definitely know how you feel about that funeral home. So SCI is a big aggregator. We've grown largely through acquisition since the 1960s. And now we have geographic coverage across all of the US and Canada. And you might be wondering, what the heck is a funeral business doing with a CDP, right? What customer information do we have, and how much personalization do we really need? Right, with this wide swath of markets, we see a lot of differentiation. So our Seattle market, for example, the Pacific Northwest, they tend to value very simple services, cremation, and also green solutions and alternative body disposition, such as human composting and water cremation. And then we have our Florida market, which is incredibly celebratory. Our venues there look more like wedding venues than a traditional funeral home. And we've also seen a lot of change in the industry. Funeral business has been around as long as people have been around. But in the last 10 years, and particularly in the last 5, with the influence of COVID-19, we've seen a lot of change in consumer preferences. Cremation continues to rise. There's now a near ubiquitous use of the term celebration of life. And we're seeing people skew to more simpler services that focus on an uplifting tone. So how do we balance that with the fact that we know we still have a lot of traditional burial consumers who want that sort of chapel pew experience, with those who want a full-on party with champagne toasts? So there's a lot of personalization and change. What we're also seeing, right, so even though we don't make up a huge portion of the market, we're the biggest player by a long shot. So we are the face of the funeral industry. And data is the neck that turns that head. We have an extremely data-driven leadership. So my team gets to help work with our leadership to understand, what do consumers want? What is missing? What products, what rituals in an increasingly secular environment are we missing to help our customers remember and celebrate life? So we're not just helping drive the bottom line. We're fundamentally changing the way that people experience death, dying, and planning in North America. So when our leadership set out to look at our key growth drivers for the next couple of years, they gave the same presentation. A lot of these slides are from our investor presentation back in 2022. There were 3 really critical things that we needed to do. One is drive pre-need cemetery sales growth. That's essential for the health of our business, but also it's really important for us to educate our consumers on all of their cemetery options, right? I know it's not the first thing you want to do when you come to Vegas. We have some beautiful locations in town here, and they have cremation niche inventory that would absolutely blow you away. So you can permanently, what we call inurn, ashes in a cemetery in a beautiful, totally customizable glass front niche that is absolutely exceptional. And most people don't know that that exists. And then we have the second pillar, which is squarely where our team sits, which is all about technology, leveraging data. And then the third pillar is our capital structure and financial tools to help make sure that SCI is prepared in the long run. Because right, our cemeteries we manage in perpetuity. Our online obituaries we manage in perpetuity. And we would not be able to do any of these 3 things without a huge digital transformation that's happening in our business. We have an absolutely massive website. And again, you might not think that at first glance, but right, we serve 350 to 400,000 families at need every year. And we try to tell every single one of their life stories. We offer families the opportunity to leave photos, share memories, even buy flowers and gifts for other family members. But this also is a great opportunity for us to help educate our customers and to get in front of them as a brand. And this is fundamentally changing the way that we do business, particularly with the aging baby boomer segment and Gen X, who want to engage with us digitally. So it's helping our customers plan and become more educated in their options. We're seeing planning rise, especially, again, with the influence of COVID. But we're also seeing them wanting to come through that digital front door. So now you can kind of see the underpinnings of why we need a CDP. We have a ton of digital data. We have a ton of just data on our customers, their family relationships, their likely preferences. But also, as I said, we grow largely through acquisition. So we have data from disparate sources. Not all of it might be reliable. If you bought a pre-need cemetery plot in 1965 from your local cemetery, that contract is probably still on paper in that location. So we know we've got to aggregate all this data together. But the cost of failure is extremely high. So when Julie said that, that totally resonated with me this morning. Because let's say you, Mary, just lost your husband, Gary. And we send an automated SMS text to you that says, "Thank you for entrusting us with Joe's services." There is no coming back from that. Or maybe we send a direct mail piece to Mary's house addressed to her husband a year and a half later, even though we did his services and he's interred in one of our locations. There's absolutely no coming back from that, right? We do not tolerate that kind of failure and those gaps in our data, so we knew that we needed a tool that was going to be able to handle that complexity and our extreme rules that we use for selection, because we want to make sure that every customer we're communicating with is open to that communication, it's the right time and the right content. So I first joined SEI in 2018. Let me tell you, when they said, "Hey, do you want to come interview to join the death care business?" Like, I'm not so sure about that. But in meeting with and talking to the folks at SEI, it's one of the most compassionate and human-forward businesses that I've ever witnessed. And data and technology are not center stage. We are backstage, helping make things just a little bit easier for our employees and for our customers. So when I joined in 2018, the first mission that was set before me by our Chief Marketing Officer, Jamie Pierce, was that all of our outbound communications need to pass the 60 Minutes test. What is the 60 Minutes test? If Jamie had to go on 60 Minutes and defend what we were doing in marketing, that she would be enthusiastic and proud to do so. So with all of our different disparate data sources, we knew we had gaps in the data. They weren't connecting well. We knew we were not passing the 60 Minutes test. So the foundations were laid in 2018 to start stitching data together to understand performance, compliance gaps, data gaps. And then in 2020, everything changes, right? This extremely human, emotional business that was managed mostly face-to-face had to dramatically change. And I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to anyone who knows or is or was ever a funeral director. The last 3 years have been incredibly difficult for the field. But it has opened the door for us to look at our technology stack and say, what are we missing? How can we create more digital experiences and reduce friction in what can be very long customer journeys? So, right, we often work with families who will purchase their cemetery plots when they're in their 50s or in their 60s, but then they'll wait until their mid-late 70s to plan their funerals. How do we stay in contact with those folks over that long period of time? So in 2022, we started looking for a CDP and ultimately adopted Treasure Data, with our implementation starting in August. So we're just over a year into our implementation now, and I'm here to tell you, I'm living proof, no pun intended, that there's so much that can happen in your first year of working with a CDP. And now the CDP is that brain, that central nervous system that we're using to power our future technology and growth. So we have the other underpinnings of e-commerce, our login platform that just launched a couple of weeks ago, our test and learn and marketing automation platforms. They're all based on the CDP. But when we started adopting this technology, we knew that we needed to deliver returns to the business very quickly. And the returns is financial, but also in terms of customer experience. Because when I mentioned that mom and pop funeral home that's on the corner that you know from your hometown, you know how you feel about that funeral home. And referrals still make up a giant portion of our business. So how do we make sure that we are creating better customer experiences and driving revenue right away? We also weren't the only new technology player coming in, right? SCI was looking at its entire technology stack and saying, how do we quickly, iteratively introduce new technology that plays well together? So when we were selecting a tool, we knew that it had to work well with the tools we had, but the tools we had were pretty ubiquitous, right? So we had Salesforce as a CRM system and as an outbound email and SMS channel. And then we also have most of our data just like in Microsoft SQL Server. So we knew we could pretty much play with anybody that was in this space. And we cast a very wide net. But when it came down to it, there are a few things that were really important to us. And one of them was that everything must be completely custom. We're a unique environment. We're not quite retail. We're not quite B2B, but you're really only making 1 or 2 purchases with us throughout the entire course of your life. So we needed something that we could build to be custom to us. I know every business says they're, as my boss says, a special snowflake, but we really are. We're unique. And we had to be able to create those selection rules so that we do not damage relationships with our customers. But also, we have a small team supporting the CDP. They're here today. They're just 3 of us, right? And we're managing millions and millions of customer profiles. So we knew that this tool needed to be flexible enough and easy enough for our marketers to work with in the audience studio. So when it got down to it, we did proof of concepts with both Redpoint Global and Treasure Data. I still believe Redpoint Global would have been a good fit for us. They were just a little bit higher intensity, would have required more from us on a day-to-day basis to manage with Redpoint. So we selected Treasure Data and started our implementation in August. And one thing I will say before we get into some of the examples of how we've deployed CDP in our business is that this implementation would not have gone very well at all if we didn't have experts in our data who knew every field, every table, who knew how they wanted unification to look. Because this platform is completely custom, but that means it is completely custom. There's nothing that is out of the box. It's not going to do it for you. You need to have those data experts on your team because your CDP is only going to be as good as the data is. So you've got to have those folks who know ultimately what they want from the tool. So this slide has been the pride and joy of my team for the last year. I'm only going to highlight a couple of things on here, so please feel free to take a photo of it. Come find us later and talk to us about our journey. But the things that I'm going to highlight for you today are the web personalization. We also facilitated a change in our email marketing tool. Right now we are using a Salesforce-based tool. And we're doing all of the selections, personalizations. We're guiding people through that sales journey. So when they announce CJO, it's like, ooh, this is something that we could use as we have long relationships with our customers. We also are now powering our at-need, so during a death case, SMS text. This is the first time the funeral industry is using text to communicate with our customers to let them know where they are in their care process. And then beyond just content personalization, we are also starting to toe into what we call full experience personalization, where we are helping get folks with the right interests to the right sales counselors, to the right funeral directors to make sure they get what they need out of their experience. So web personalization. This is one of the first things we deployed. So we started in August. We deployed our first web personalization use cases in February. And we can personalize now for browsers based on if they have a cemetery, cremation, celebration of life, or veteran preference. If you know any veterans, by the way, exceptional benefits in the funeral and cemetery space. So our cemetery personalization is one of the ones that was most important to our leadership, again, critical to our financial health. And what we have seen is an incredible uptick in folks converting to form fills on our website if they see this kind of content. So we see that folks who have indicated cemetery preference to us that then see cemetery content convert to form fills at least 25% more frequently. That's kind of the lowest that we've seen, but it's at least 25% more frequently. And you might say, well, Beth, maybe this is just a more qualified audience, right? The cemetery group, people with indicated interest, they're a more qualified audience. And you would be absolutely correct. They are a much more qualified audience. However, our treasure data implementation team worked with us to create an A/B testing solution so that I know that this is actually the lift peer-to-peer that we see when people see this content. So whenever you come to the Dignity Memorial website, not only do you get a treasure data ID and cookie, but you also get put into one of 5 groups, A, B, C, D, E. And I can turn on personalization for just one of those groups, 3 of those groups, all of them if I want to. But actually, I've never turned it on for all 5 groups, because I always want that holdout group so I can understand how the market is moving and how our content is changing the way people engage on the website. And we can turn this on and off and toggle it and toggle all of our requirements in Audience Studio, which is something that our marketers can do. So it makes it really easy for us to personalize and move and shift as we see things change. We're also using personalization as an educational tool. So for example, celebration of life. Did you know that when you pre-plan, you can select the catering menu? You can select the music that you want to play. You can select what readings you'd like to have or what rituals you'd like to see. I want a champagne toast at my funeral, right? We can do all of those selections for you at the time of pre-planning. So when we're educating our customers that have kind of indicated to us that they might be a good celebration of life fit, we're serving them up with educational content to show them what all of their options are. There are so many options for you, for your parents, for your kids, whoever you want to plan for. And so we're seeing folks that see this personalization convert twice as frequently as our default content. We also have a cremation segment. Like I said, we've got amazing niches, memorialization inventory. And we see these folks convert 50% more frequently. Now again, you might say, Beth, you might just have exceptional content writers who are putting out new content at the right time, and these are just better offers. It's just better content than your default. And I do love our content writer for Dignity Memorial. She is absolutely exceptional. But we tested these offers as defaults by themselves, and they failed. So it's about meeting the customers with the right content at the right time. Our default content's still great for our first-time people hitting the website. But once they've indicated to us what they're interested in, this really resonates. And then we get into beyond just content personalization. And we get into what we call the intelligent sales experience. So when I was first interviewing with SCI, Steve Tidwell, who is our SVP of Sales and Marketing, he reminded me, right, data and technology, they're not the center of this business. Humans are the center of this business. It's really emotional, it's really powerful, and what we're doing is helping people. So what I want you to do is use data to enable better human connection. And I think my team has heard me say that dozens and dozens and dozens of times. That is our North Star. And I feel like we are finally honoring that challenge with this particular use case and supporting intelligent sales. Now what that means is, right, when someone raises their hand, indicates interest to us, they're coming into the funnel, if they're not communicated with right away, if they're not communicated with frequently enough, or if they have indicated a particular interest that better fits a different sales representative or funeral director, we can reroute those leads. So right, Salesforce and Treasure Data have bidirectional communication. At first, we were just using that bidirectional communication to tell us, oh, this person prefers cemetery, this person prefers celebration of life. Here's their likelihood to convert score. But we realized we could overwrite default fields as well, including the owners. So we set up what we call a queuing system within Salesforce, and we have all kinds of different rules and queries that will move people to where they need to go. And we have entire teams across the country at SCI now that are dependent on CDP sending them leads that are going to be great fits for them. So you can imagine in a very near-term solution for us would be, we've got somebody who has indicated celebration of life interest on the website. CDP is facilitating the routing to the right person. We're also intercepting that person and saying, hey, look, most of our business, actually writing that business, still takes place in a location or in a home on a family's couch. So let's go ahead and get you set up with a digital appointment. So now all that sales counselor, all that funeral director has to do is show up in the room and help people, right? Because trust me, being a funeral director, being a sales counselor in this business is a calling, and that calling is not paperwork, and it's not phone calls. So we are helping facilitate making those things just a little more frictionless for both our consumers and our employees. Now, also, you saw the giant map that I had of all the different markets. We know how diverse they are. They also all have different leadership teams, right? When we acquire businesses, a lot of times their management stays in place. They know their customers better than anyone, and we want them to be able to leverage those relationships. But what that means is their requirements can vary widely in terms of what they want, when they want to move things, how they want to approach their sales process. So if you can imagine trying to do Salesforce development for 100 different markets and 4,000 different sales counselors, it's absolutely impossible. We tried. But with the CDP, suddenly this becomes more plausible. So last Friday morning at 9:30, I got a call from one of our senior sales leaders. And he said, hey, in our Florida market, in our celebratory market, I've got these 10 new sales counselors, and they don't have anything to do, right? We hired them, but they're not getting any leads. I need you to build something to route to them, and here's who they are and what they need, and here are the requirements. So I said, okay. So we used Audience Studio to build kind of a skin of the code that we wanted, right? Pulled it into the data workbench, played around in SQL, added all of their selections, 150 lines of code later, right? And those sales counselors were working those leads by 4 p.m. that afternoon. So if you've got folks who know your data and know SQL, right, you can create these kinds of automations very quickly. It would have taken months of Salesforce development time for this to be able to work. And you could never have customized it in the way that we do now. So we're continuing to grow and evolve and learn and step into, what the folks on stage were talking about here earlier. Taking CDP out of marketing and into the operations space, into the sales space. And trust me, word has gotten out at SCI about CDP. And we've got a ton of people raising their hands saying, hey, I think this might also work for me. So I'm incredibly grateful to the Treasure Data team and the support staff. So Ashwin, Meg, Mayank, and Jaleel were exceptional support. We also, like I said, did our implementation with them, and they worked with us through a lot of our rules and iterations in terms of unification and data cleansing. So thank you so much for your time. Again, I'm so happy to be here representing Dignity Memorial, and please enjoy the rest of CDP World.